Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Hit that like button if you've ever found out something you weren't supposed to, and had to pretend like you didn't. Let me take you straight to Thursday night. She thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I had been pretending for weeks. The bathroom door clicked shut, and I heard that fake little cough she always does when she's trying to seem normal. A few minutes later, the light footsteps. No perfume. She never wears perfume around me anymore. Just silence. Then the sound of the front door closing like a whisper. At exactly 8:14 p.m., she left. I stayed there, in bed, eyes wide open, waiting for the streetlight shadow to stop shifting across the bedroom wall. Then I got up, reached for the folder I'd hidden under the mattress, and opened it. Inside were three things: a receipt from a hotel downtown, a photo she didn't know I had, taken by someone I paid too much money to, and a spare set of new house keys. I walked downstairs, slowly, like I was sneaking around someone else's life. The locksmith had come earlier that day while she was at yoga. He didn't ask many questions. I told him it was for security reasons. He gave me a nod and said, "Smart move. Gotta protect what matters." What mattered had already left the house in red heels. The new locks clicked beautifully. Clean, cold, quiet. I stood there staring at the door, heart thudding in my ears. Not with anger, no, that would have made this easier. I just felt erased. While she was probably ordering wine with Marcus from work, I was locking her out of the world she thought was hers to manipulate. She didn't know it yet, but she wasn't coming back in. I had already removed her name from the electric bill, canceled her gym membership, the one I paid for, and drafted a message to her parents that I hadn't sent yet. It was all waiting in a folder on my laptop titled, "Backup Plan, Final." At 10:27 p.m., she called. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered like nothing was wrong. "Daryl? Can't get in. The keys aren't working. What's going on?" I almost asked her what she ordered for dinner. I almost asked if Marcus liked his steak rare. But instead I said, "You're outside." She paused. "Yes, what's going on?" "Good," I replied. "Stay there. I have something for you." What I did next, that was the moment everything changed. Her voice cracked slightly when I told her to wait. I could hear the confusion turning to panic, the realization just beginning to creep in. She had always been quick with excuses, always knew how to spin a story so tightly that even I believed the knots were just misunderstandings. But this time, she wasn't inside with her hand on my arm. She was outside, with nowhere to hide. I opened the door slowly. She stood on the porch in that same navy blue dress that hugged her figure just right. The one she never wore around me anymore. Makeup still flawless. Phone in her hand like a lifeline, and a stranger's cologne clinging faintly to her. "What is this, Daryl?" she asked. Her tone wasn't fear. It was annoyance. Like I was the one acting irrational. Like I was the one who owed her an explanation. "You said you were having dinner with coworkers," I said calmly. "You didn't say which one you were sleeping with." She flinched, just for a second. Then she rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are you serious with this?" Her voice rose, not with guilt, but with that well-practiced exasperation I'd heard too many times before. "You're being paranoid again. This is ridiculous. Just let me in, Daryl." But I didn't move, and for the first time in years, neither did she. I reached behind the door and handed her a small envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of her text exchanges, hotel confirmation emails, and a candid photo of her and Marcus leaving a rooftop bar, arms around each other like teenagers. She took the envelope, glanced at the contents, and suddenly went pale. "You've been spying on me?" "No," I said. "I've been waking up." Her mouth opened like she was ready to launch into another lie. Probably something about emotional confusion or you were distant. But this time, I didn't give her the space to rewrite the narrative. "You lied to my face every night for months. You kissed me with his breath still on your lips. And you thought I'd never notice? Or worse, you thought I'd just keep loving you anyway." She stepped forward, but the door frame was there. My hand stayed on it. "You're being dramatic," she said. quieter now. We can talk about this inside. I already did the talking, Lenora, I said, voice shaking slightly. I begged you to tell me what was wrong. I asked you why you stopped smiling at me. You gave me silence. So here's mine. I closed the door. Not slammed. Not shouted. Just closed. Deliberately. Like ending a book I should have stopped reading years ago. Behind the door, I heard her call my name once. Then again. Then nothing. Just the sound of her heels walking away. And in the quiet that followed, I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. But for once, that emptiness was mine, and not something she left behind. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch, staring at the ceiling as the hours crawled by. I kept thinking I'd hear her car pull back into the driveway, like she'd try one last time to barge in with crocodile tears and tell me I misunderstood everything. But the street outside stayed still. Cold. Quiet. My phone didn't ring again. Not a single message. And somehow that hurt more than if she'd cursed me out or begged to be let back in. Around 3 a.m., I opened the fridge and stood there staring, not even hungry, just trying to fill the silence with anything that felt remotely normal. Leftover pasta, a bottle of barbecue sauce, half a lemon. But what caught my eye was a small, neatly packed container with a sticky note that said, "For Thursday. I love you." It was mine. From me. Something I'd made for her lunch 2 days earlier. She never took it. That stupid little note hit harder than the hotel receipts. I used to do that all the time. Pack her food with dumb little scribbles. Reminders that I was still there. Still trying. She used to text me heart emojis in return. But somewhere along the way, the notes stayed behind and the replies stopped coming. I should have seen it sooner. Maybe I did, but I didn't want to admit it. The next morning, I sent a message to her sister. Just one line. "Lenora won't be staying here anymore. Please don't ask me to explain." She replied a few minutes later with, "I'm sorry, Daryl. We all knew something was off." I didn't know how to feel about that. Everyone knew, and no one said anything? I stepped outside, barefoot on the porch, watching the sunrise peek over the neighbor's roof. There was still dew on the lawn. The air felt sharper than usual. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. Then I noticed it. Her key. It was on the welcome mat. No note. No message. Just a cold metal goodbye left like trash on the ground. She must have returned after I fell asleep and dropped it there. The same key I once placed in her palm when we bought this house. The one she had joked made her officially tied to this boring little man. I bent down, picked it up slowly, and for some reason, I smiled. Not because it felt good, but because it confirmed what I suspected all along. She never planned to fight for anything. Not me. Not us. Just convenience. But I was done being convenient. I turned the key over once in my hand, then tossed it into the trash bin without a second thought. It was time for the next step. Later that afternoon, after ignoring 3 unknown calls and 1 blocked number, all of which I assumed were her, I finally stepped into what used to be our bedroom. It still smelled faintly like her. Lavender and mint shampoo, a brand I used to pick up for her on autopilot. I sat at the edge of the bed, not sure what I was expecting to feel, but it wasn't this strange sense of numbness. I thought grief would be louder, angrier, but it was quiet, like the way fog just rolls in and stays. I opened the closet. Half of her clothes were gone. Not all, just enough to confirm she'd made a decision. A deliberate one. Her drawer was empty. Even the small silver bracelet I bought her on our 5th anniversary was missing from the jewelry box. But in the corner of the closet, near the shoe rack, was a cardboard box with my name scrawled across the top. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. Something about the handwriting made my stomach turn. Casual, rushed, like she had scribbled it with no emotion at all. Inside were things I hadn't thought about in years. Our wedding photo in a cracked frame, the dried corsage from the night she met my parents, and a half-used notebook we once kept as a silly journal to write rules for our future kids. There was even a movie stub from our first date, taped to a page with a handwritten note that said, "Let's never become one of those sad couples. Too late." At the very bottom of the box was a card. No envelope, just a simple sorry written on the front. I flipped it open, expecting an apology, a confession, maybe even a pathetic attempt to explain herself. Instead, it said, "You were always too good for me. I just didn't want to admit it." That was it. I should have felt vindicated, like I'd won something. But all I felt was insulted. Like she got to leave on her terms. Like she'd framed herself as the damaged one who was just doing me a favor by walking away. That's the thing about people like Lenora, they don't take responsibility. They repackage betrayal as mercy. They don't say, "I hurt you." They say, "You deserve better," and disappear. Well, this time she wasn't disappearing without consequence. Because what she didn't know was that I wasn't finished. I wasn't looking for more proof. I had plenty. I had the photos, the receipts, the lies she couldn't keep straight anymore. But curiosity has a way of dragging you back into rooms you swore you'd locked shut. That night, as I sat on the couch in an oversized hoodie I hadn't worn since college, I opened my old laptop, the one Lenora used to borrow when hers acted up. I wasn't looking for anything specific, really. Maybe just trying to feel like I was still in control of something. Anything. I opened the browser. Her email was still logged in. Part of me wanted to shut the lid right then and there. Another part of me whispered, if she kept this open, she didn't care if you saw it. Or maybe she just assumed I never would. There it was. Subject line, Friday night was magic sparkles. It wasn't from Marcus. It was from someone else. A name I didn't recognize. Elliot. I stared at it for a moment, confused. Then I clicked. The message was short. One paragraph. No punctuation. Just emotion spilled out in digital ink. You looked so alive when you laughed. I haven't seen that side of you in years. I don't care about your husband or your house. Just say the word, and we'll disappear again. No more hiding. Again. That word hit me like a brick. Again. I searched the inbox. Dozens of emails from Elliot. Some old. Some recent. Some dated almost a year ago. Trips. Meetings. Notes signed yours. I felt like a fool. Marcus wasn't the only one. He wasn't even the first. I don't remember shutting the laptop. I just remember sitting there, holding my breath like that would stop the shaking. The betrayal wasn't new anymore, it was layered. A mosaic of deception, each tile colder than the last. She hadn't just lied. She'd lived another life. One I never even got a glimpse of. And the worst part? I realized I had spent so long trying to keep her happy that I never once asked if she was still mine. But now I knew. She wasn't. And maybe she never had been. She returned the next morning like nothing had happened. The same woman who left in heels and perfume now stood in front of the house wearing sweatpants and sunglasses, holding a half-empty coffee cup like she'd just been out for a casual errand. I watched her from the upstairs window, heart hammering in my chest, wondering how someone could walk so casually back into the scene of a disaster they created. She knocked 3 times. Not too hard, not too soft. Just enough to say, I still belong here. I didn't rush down. I waited. I wanted her to feel the silence I had swallowed for the past year. Eventually, she called out my name. Daryl? Come on. Don't make this weird. Don't make this weird. That was always her strategy, minimize, deflect, twist. I had spent years being gaslit into thinking I was the overly sensitive one, the insecure one, the problem. But I wasn't the one sending emails to men I claimed not to know. I wasn't the one collecting affairs like souvenirs. I finally opened the door. She looked surprised to see me standing there calm. No yelling, no accusations, just the cold air between us. I need to get some things, she said, avoiding eye contact. I stepped aside and nodded. Your stuff's already packed. It's in the garage. Her face twitched. I could see it. This wasn't the version of me she was used to. This wasn't the man who asked what he did wrong every time she snapped at me. This was someone she didn't know how to control. She followed me silently through the side gate. There, stacked neatly in boxes, were her belongings. Labeled, organized, like I was preparing for a move, not a breakdown. She stared at the boxes and finally whispered, You really did it. I had time, I said, then added. Especially while you were busy disappearing with Elliot. Or was it Marcus this time? Her silence was louder than any scream. You don't get to play confused anymore. I continued, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. You chose chaos. You chose to build an entire life outside of ours. All I did was give you the keys to walk out the front door without pretending anymore. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stood there, blinking like maybe, just maybe. She realized she had finally run out of stories to tell. Then she said the quietest thing I've ever heard her say. So, that's it? I looked at her like she was a stranger on the street. That's it, I said. But I'm just getting started. After she loaded the last of her boxes into her friend's car. I didn't ask who it was, but it wasn't Marcus or Elliot. She stood by the open trunk like she was waiting for some dramatic last words. I didn't give her any. I just watched from the porch, arms crossed, wondering how many times she'd rehearsed this moment in her head. In her version, I probably begged, cried, promised to be better. But this wasn't her version anymore. It was mine. She closed the trunk gently, walked back toward the steps and said, I didn't expect it to end like this. Her voice was soft, nostalgic almost, like we just finished watching a movie and she didn't like the ending. I said nothing. What was left to say? I'd already said everything in the silence I gave her when she begged to come inside and found the locks changed. In the photos I printed and handed her without comment. In the fact that I hadn't screamed, hadn't begged, hadn't fought. That silence was my final love letter. The last thing I had left to give. She lingered like she was waiting for a hug, a flicker of forgiveness. Something. I just turned and went back inside. But here's what no one tells you. When the person who broke your heart walks away, they don't take their mess with them. They leave it scattered across the couch cushions, baked into your pillowcase, folded into every stupid t-shirt you ever bought them on a whim. I opened the laundry room later that night and found one of her socks, still inside the dryer. That tiny thing undid me. I sat on the floor with it in my hand, and for the first time since this whole thing exploded, I broke. Not because I wanted her back, but because the life we built, no matter how fake it turned out to be, still had my fingerprints all over it. Every corner of this house held a ghost of a version of her I used to love, the version I thought was real. I walked into the kitchen and stared at the dent in the fridge where she once dropped a bottle of wine and laughed for 10 minutes straight. I remembered how I told her, that dent is permanent. And she kissed me like it didn't matter, like imperfections were part of the charm. Turns out, some imperfections are warnings, and others are consequences. That night, I deleted every photo of her from my phone, every video, every birthday post. I cleared her from my call log and blocked her email. I didn't do it in rage. I did it like you clean out a wound, carefully, slowly, knowing it'll sting. But the bleeding had finally stopped. Weeks passed. The house was quieter now, but not the kind of quiet that felt empty, the kind that felt earned. At first, I thought I'd always hear echoes of her laughter in the hallway, always brace for the sound of her keys in the door. But no, slowly that faded. The house started feeling like mine again. And not just the building, the energy, the rhythm, the space. I repainted the living room. I took down our framed wedding photo and replaced it with a painting I found at a thrift store. A crooked city skyline under a blood orange sky. Something about it felt honest. Broken and beautiful at the same time. People think healing happens in huge moments, like signing papers or burning old love notes. But for me, it happened in small ones. Drinking coffee without checking my phone. Listening to music I liked without worrying if she'd roll her eyes. Walking into the grocery store and realizing I didn't have to check which brand of almond milk she preferred. Then one morning I went for a walk. Not because I was restless, but because I finally wanted to. I ended up at this small bookshop near the edge of town. The kind that smells like paper and forgotten dreams. A woman bumped into me in the poetry section. Literally. She was holding a stack of used paperbacks and laughed nervously. Sorry. I wasn't looking where I was going. I smiled. And for the first time in forever, it felt genuine. That's okay, I said. Neither was I. Her name was Ruth. She teaches high school English. We didn't fall in love that day. This isn't some romantic twist. But we talked. shared stories, laughed, and later had coffee that didn't end in accusations or lies. That's when I realized something. The story Lenora and I had built wasn't a failure. It was just a lesson. Painful one, yes, but one I needed to finally stop being someone's backup plan. Now, I'm the main character in my own life again. And the locks still changed. But the biggest thing that changed was me. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been through a betrayal that led you to rediscover yourself, share it in the comments. Or tell us about a historical moment when someone reclaimed their life after being underestimated. Your story might inspire someone else. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More real stories are coming soon.